Diane First, Corte Madera.
Carla Condon, Corte Madera.
Katie Rice, Ross Valley, Board of Supervisors.
Alice Fredericks, Vice Mayor, Town of Tiburon.
Diane Steinhauser, Executive Director of Staff to the Working Group.
Gary Phillips, Mayor of San Rafael.
Beach Cool from Ross, alternate for Tom McInerney and Selma.
Thank you and welcome everybody. Welcome for your time, your attention, and your thoughtfulness. We are going to move on now in a second. I just want to make an announcement that TAM, the Transportation Authority of Marin Full Commission, did approve funding for the studies that were requested by the working group last time. I'm going to ask Diane to give us a little more information about that.
Yes, good afternoon. We actually received a request from the working group members to do a couple of things over the next 30 days. After a presentation on the southbound project evolution and the alternatives that were considered, the working group put some emphasis and focus on a phase of the current southbound project, which would basically take Lucky Pfeiffer traffic off onto Drake and close the Lucky Pfeiffer access from 101. This had some very preliminary analysis done historically, but it was not looked at in great detail. So the working group asked, and we carried that request to the TAM board, to look further into first the traffic impacts of that, and then if need be, the engineering associated with some of those features, including a rough cost estimate. We brought that request to the TAM board last Monday, and they authorized $55,000 to do the detailed work necessary for us to consider that option further. This is phase one, southbound option C. The second request from the working group is that we review both new highway and road related improvements from the public, as well as new bike and pedestrian related improvements from the public. And we asked the TAM board for $13,000 to do a very cursory overview and a fatal flaw kind of an analysis of new options after the working group requested that TAM staff conduct that. TAM staff chose to bring that request to the working group because we do not have traffic engineering capabilities. We have a very small staff, nor do we have structural engineering and freeway design capabilities on staff currently. So that $13,000 was approved as well. So we're free to proceed with those analyses. We did get a request from one of the TAM board members who sits on the working group, Commissioner First, to hold off on doing that detailed analysis until we hear from some of the constituents that are looking at new options, particularly the Marin Deserves Better group, and we will do our best to meet that request. So that's where we stand currently with being able to proceed. Today, obviously, we're going to be looking at northbound alternatives historically, and also the bike pedestrian considerations as well. So that completes that report.
Are there any questions on the report? Seeing none, let's move on now to the consideration of the draft meetings for May 6th. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing none here, I do have one myself. I read these very fast, but what I didn't see in them was a reference to either mine or Executive Director Steinhauser's comments explaining the constraints on finances that the group is now working with. And so if that could be added to the minutes, that would be very helpful. Did you want to comment on that at all?
Actually, there's a small paragraph on that on page 505 of the minutes, and we'll make sure that reflects the discussion that occurred at the meeting.
Thank you very much. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve as amended.
And
A second.
and any objections? The minutes are approved. Moving on now to item 3, I'd like to introduce Gina Bartlett. She is our facilitator for this meeting, and she will take us through an agenda review and any follow-up items from previous meetings.
Okay, great. Hello, nice to see you all. So the purpose of this meeting is twofold. One is to look at the northbound design options, and the other is to look at the transit, bike, and pedestrian piece. So we're asking to change the agenda just a little bit. I was writing it, and we decided to change it. We're going to go first to the bike and pedestrian and transit design options. The technical team will present. We'll have discussion and public input because the presenter is running behind for the northbound option. She's on her way with the handouts, and so that gives us a little flexibility there. And then after that, we will go to continuing to review the design options. We'll concentrate on the northbound. We'll have a technical presentation followed by discussion and then public input on those. And then toward the end of the meeting, we'll just summarize, confirm any technical analyses or requests that you have of the staff to make sure that that's within your priorities, and then prepare for the next meeting. I think that's the main purpose of the agenda. I don't know if there's any questions or comments on that from the working group. No? And then with regards to follow-up from last time, I think, Diane, you have a few announcements on
I
the
do.
next meeting, as well as I think there was a letter that you, from
Yes.
MTC.
Well, a couple of things. At the last working group meeting, we discussed the ability of members of the public or advocacy interest groups to come forward with short presentations on ideas that they have for the corridor. We've been talking about this actually for a couple of meetings. We are making available to anyone that requests them a full-scale aerial drawing of the corridor. If you would like to use that in making your presentation, please keep that in mind that that's available to you. We also discussed briefly at the last meeting the idea of a form that we would ask each alternative proposal to use, and that to be filled out in advance. Finally, we discussed a deadline for proposals to come in, and the working group established that deadline as next Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day. We will obviously take any proposals earlier. We want to confirm that staff at TAM will pass the proposals directly through to the working group, but we also want to confirm that we will be conducting a brief staff review of proposals that we can also present to the working group at the next meeting or in future meetings after that. Finally, we received a request from one member of the public, Scott Stokes, to have time to display his alternative for the public to review and the working group members to see. What we would like to do is propose a 1-hour period prior to the working group meeting where anyone, including Mr. Stokes, who wants to come show their displayed material can come show it. If you'd like us to make copies of material, we'll need to know a day or two in advance, but we would be glad to supply copies of your material to the public. That would be, and this is for anyone that's interested in displaying their proposals. This would be from 4 to 5 p.m. on June 10th. That's the date of our next working group meeting after today. We have no meetings in the next 3-week period, so it's about 3 weeks from now. And then we would have the working group from 5 to 7 p.m. We don't believe we have council conflicts with working group members, but please do speak up if you feel the 5 to 7 time period is a conflict. So that would be the game plan for looking at new proposals on June 10th. Pardon? That's a Monday, June 10th.
Thank you
Yes.
very much. Any questions or comments from the group? Seeing none, thank you for that report. We're going to move on now to
Scott has it, apparently.
yes.
I don't believe you, I sent an email to you, and I guess Diane is referring to that email?
Yes.
About requesting? Well, I think we should get it clear what I actually requested. This is for the public to have an opportunity to view plans both from Marin Deserves Better, of course, from Plan Simple, and other people's inputs in an evening venue. We want the public to come and view the options. We want the public to have a chance to view them, make comments on sheets next to them, and probably over a 2-night period, because not everybody's available. And we don't want to hold it here. We want to hold it in the area of the corridor, particularly the Corte Madera Recreation Center, in the evening to give the public chance. No connection to the work group right now, which I encourage you all to do, to attend it also, because the public will be there and you will get a chance to understand what they think of these plans. And so I think this adaptation that just came up and seemed to be dismissed as, oh, you don't have to come, I think you need to give an open, well-advertised evening presentation to all these other options, which of course are going to end up, many of them, being presented to the board.
Is there any chance that the groups who are presenting the options could organize this themselves?
Well, since I want to encourage participation of this very important work group because of their importance of presenting to the board this information, I think they should be well aware and choose something that's going to work for them and the public. What we just heard is not going to work for the public.
Yeah.
Mr. Stokes, I appreciate what you're seeking there, and more opportunity for the public to see whatever comes out of the
What's
different.
being considered.
But I actually feel that for me, as a personally as a member of the working group, to have the ability to see and talk to the designers during the open house period, contiguous to our working group meeting, in which we'll also be able to hear from staff and understand the mechanics, that's going to be a real value to me. I'd be happy to show up and come if you do something for the public, but I think even the public would benefit from coming to something here where you've got open house contiguous with the working group meeting, because we're not all experts in engineering or traffic or what have you, and I think that it's going to be important for the public to understand why something might work or might not work, or where's the value, what's not working. So I appreciate your offer, but I think for me, this is going to work quite well, and I think it's a good timing. It allows for the public to attend as well.
From 4 to 5.
No, from actually 4 to 7.
Well, that's the working group, the open house where they can walk around, view the different plans and comment. Only 1 hour at one time during working hours. I don't personally consider that. I think it should be a little bit broader.
Can I just say that whatever we're doing here will come to the full TAM board with a full opportunity for vetting. For many of us, we want to see and we do want to understand the public options, but the value comes, I think, in presenting to us first, and then perhaps deciding if further public meetings are needed. I think adding 2 evening meetings to our schedules is a great idea for the public, but it's difficult for many of us.
Yes, exactly, and that's why there's 2, so you can pick the one most convenient to you. Any evening.
All right, but for now, let's just consider having the hour workshop before the meeting and make a decision on a further workshop after the presentations. That's what I suggest. Are there any better ideas from the working group? All right, I'm seeing none, so we are going to move now.
Yeah.
Yes, John.
So I just wanted to, on the Fairfax alternative, I think is Tom not coming?
Beach.
I'm alternating for him today.
We have two alternates.
Sorry?
We have 2.
Oh,
So
okay,
Beach is
you're
in
already
for
there, so
Tom.
I'll just sit here. Yeah, Fairfax has a budget, we'll start at 6 to 9, so that's on that, so that's.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, so that was agenda item 3, and are we moving on to 5 now?
Yes.
So we'll move on to 5. Thank you, Scott. Pardon?
I'm sorry, Alice, but I thought there was this report back from MTC. I had on my notes the Steve Henninger letter. Is that not?
I'd be glad to mention it. Will the working group
I
like
had
to
that in my
discuss it
notes.
further? As follow-up.
Okay.
Well, in your packet today, and also available to the public, and sending this out in advance, on page 9 of the packet is a letter that I received from Executive Director of MTC, Steve Heminger, and he's advising that all applicants, and there was 15 of us that received this letter, all applicants need to report, submit an implementation plan to MTC on or before September 30th, 2013 for the unallocated amount of $45,650,000 for RMT project number 11, the US 101 Greenbrae Corridor Interchange Project. So this is consistent with the MTC policy that was explained back in April, and we are staying on our meeting framework timeline to try and reach consensus on a solution for the corridor. And that completes my report.
Thank you very much. I hope we achieve more than consensus. I hope we achieve just a little bit of exuberance. And right now, now do we move on to 5? Is there? Yes,
Item
please.
5. Thank you. So we're going to go to item 5 and look at the transit, bicycle, and pedestrian considerations. And the first segment will have a presentation from the technical team. In the second segment, we'll have a working group discussion. And in the third, we'll have public input.
Okay, thanks. Good afternoon. I'm going to share this presentation with Matt Haynes. Initially, I'm going to show you some of the existing physical conditions for bike, pedestrian, and transit infrastructure. Matt's going to then talk about some of the users and surveys and volumes that have been counted in the last few years out here. And then I'll wrap up with some of the ideas that have been proposed for improving bicycle, pedestrian, and transit infrastructure. I'm not going to ask you to look at this map, but there is a lot of infrastructure out there today. A lot of it is very non-standard for all users, bicyclists, pedestrians, bus riders, tough access ways to the transit stops, narrow sidewalks, lack of bike lanes and paths. But what we'll do is set this up so that we'll start in the northwest corner of Francis Lake by the Corte Madera Creek overcrossing and kind of do a counterclockwise loop. We'll walk about 1.5 miles right now. So this is a picture of Sir Francis Drake looking to the southeast. This is the on-ramp. And just to the right, you can see a very narrow pathway that crosses. It goes up over the southbound ramp there. You can see the pathway as it moves on up right next to the traffic lanes. That pathway is about, it's wider, and then it narrows down to about 5 feet. This is actually looking in the northerly on that crossing itself. And this is it's substandard for multi-use pathway use. 2 people on bikes can't cross that comfortably. There's pedestrians out there as well. It ends right at Lucky Drive. From that point, a lot of the users are forced to walk on the streets. And as we're continuing along, here's the west side of the pedestrian overcrossing at Nellen. You can see cars, lots of these cars parked in the parking lot. You can see the spiral ramp that goes up to the pedestrian overcrossing. So again, this is how it looks on the west side. By the way, this pedestrian overcrossing was built in the 50s, along with a whole bunch along 101, including, for instance, Langer Seminary Drive and some of the others. So it is a design that was used 50, 60 years ago. There is, we do have a bus stop on the west side. It's accessed by crossing the northbound on-ramp from Pfeiffer. That's an uncontrolled crosswalk, so cars can go right through there, and hopefully they'll yield to pedestrians as they're crossing the street. Bus users actually wait right in this area, right here, which is right next to the highway, in between the off-ramp and the on-ramp at that location. It's really a noisy stop. People are waited out there. The airport also stops, correct? The airport stops there. Yeah. So it makes some stops there, but again, it's not a friendly place. You're pretty close to the auto traffic. This is Temple Vista. Temple Vista has one lane in each direction with turn lanes. It also does not have bicycle lanes. It has sidewalks on both sides of the street. As we know, it's very congested during peak times, particularly during peak commute times. So now we've crossed to the east underneath Warren Drive, and this is looking toward the west at Warnham, the overcrossing. It used to be an overcrossing just for the railroad that came through here. There's a sidewalk on the north side. On the south side, there's a pathway that's right next to the road. The westbound or eastbound lanes is separated by the curb. There's traffic lanes here. If you notice the structure, there's some columns here. There's also columns here and here. Talk about those later for some of the ideas and some of the things that can be squeezed in there behind those columns. Now we're heading northerly along Redwood Highway. This is just north of Warnham. This is near the mobile home park right here. There is no sidewalk along this side of Redwood. There's no bike lanes on Redwood Highway either. There's no sidewalk right here, although it picks up down near the Bevmo place. This is proposed to be constructed in the next, I think this summer, by the city of Larkspur. We've got funding to do that, so that gap will be closed. But again, it's not a super friendly place to walk along. And this is also along Redwood, but now we're looking toward the south. This is just north of Industrial. This is the on-ramp to the highway. The on-ramp has a traffic light to get on. The off-ramp, which is just to the south, this actually doesn't have a traffic light. It's a stop sign as you come out right there. But you can see the bus stop. Very similar to the bus stop serving people that want to get on the buses going southbound 101. You do need to crosswalk here, a crosswalk here. The pedestrian overcrossing is to the right in this area right here. Again, the bus stop is right next to the freeway. It's not a super comfortable place. This is another look at it, a little bit closer in, and you can see the small shelter that's right there, and the sidewalks and the crosswalks. And as we're heading north again, this is the other side of the pedestrian overcrossing. It has these spiral ramps. These are in excess of the grades that you would need to build it to under the ADA standards. It is tough to ride a bike up it. Even when I ride my bike on it, I have to be very careful so I don't fall over or just walk the bike up. It can be difficult for people, for older people. Matt will talk about some of the users that he counted and that were surveyed that use this structure different times of day and on weekends as well. But to get to it, you do need to cross the crosswalk at the signalized intersection of Industrial. Okay, looking northerly on Redwood Highway, this is how it looks. There are no sidewalks on either side. There's parking on the west side right against the highway wall, the structure. Recently, a bike lane was fit in the southbound direction, and some arrows or shared lane use arrows were installed in the northbound direction. There's not room currently to put in another bike lane, and there's open driveways all the way down. You go all the way down to the north here. So it's not a real comfortable place to walk either. But when you take that route, you can get to the overcrossing that goes over Cordovera Creek on the other side of the highway. And this is just to the east of the northbound lanes. This pathway, you can see most of the people in this picture are walking their bikes, partially because of the steepness of this, but also because it's so narrow. It gets down to about 4 feet at some of its tight points. The standard dimension for multi-use paved path is 12 feet. That's the preferred width, generally want to see. And last but not least, this is on Sir Francis Drake. This is actually on the north side of Sir Francis Drake, just west of Larkspur Landing Circle. Looking to the west, you can see the sidewalk ends right here. There is no continuous sidewalk on the north side of Drake through the interchange. There also are no bus stops in that interchange area, either northbound, southbound, eastbound, or westbound. I just showed some of the pedestrian and bicycle and transit features. There's many more, of course, but I just wanted to kind of expedite this presentation. This map shows the current Bay Trail route going north, or from the south, starting at the south and going northerly. It follows Redwood Highway. There's a multi-use path here by Shorebird Marsh. And then, of course, that area that I showed you that there is no sidewalk that's going to be constructed this summer. That's this segment right here, just north of Warnham, all the way to the pedestrian overcrossing. That's dotted in there because that's planned to be part of the Bay Trail. The plan is, the Bay Trail's goal is always to do a multi-use pathway as much as practical. So that's the goal there. The current route does show it going over the pedestrian overcrossing and then across the west side of the Corte Madera Creek overcrossing. Remember, that's only 5 feet wide at certain points. There are east-west routes on the north side of Sir Francis Drake that intercepts and goes underneath the highway. There are some boardwalks in this area. There's also a sidewalk and bike path that are next to each other on Sir Francis Drake from the northbound ramps to about this point here, and then there's a class 1 12-foot bike path that continues out to this park. And there is a future plan to extend this pathway along toward San Quentin. There's also a route that goes along around Larkspur Ferry. This is the current route. This is not what the Bay Trail would like to see. Their intent is to keep a route along the shoreline as much as practical and using multi-path pathway standards. One other map that is kind of busy, but I'll try to help you interpret it. This is the bicycle route map from the Bicycle Coalition, and this shows the north-south Greenbrae, which is Route 16 coming here to Sandra Marker Trail, which I didn't show in photos, but it's a very popular route to schools and for recreational use. We know that the Cal Park Hill pathway was built a couple years ago, and it's seen a lot of popularity. The Central Moon Ferry Connector will go over the Sir Francis Drake right here, and then come back down to Gray, just south of Sir Francis Drake. And the Bike Coalition's plan would be to have the north-south Greenway along the old railroad corridor to the east side of the project site. Currently, it's marked and striped along Redwood Highway, which I showed you before, with the bike lane and the sharrows along this pathway. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk about some of the users. And then I'll come back and show you some of the improvements that we plan.
Great, thanks David. So as David mentioned, I'm going to cover some of the information on counts and some of the users that are using some of the pathways, sidewalks, bike lanes, and traveling through the corridor. As part of the project, there have been a number of pedestrian and bicycle counts that have been taken on some of the trails at every intersection within the corridor, and some select other areas. So the chart that you see over on the right is just, it's a little bit small, but in terms of the summary, it's the daily volumes on the Corte Madera Creek path. So the path that David was mentioning that runs along the north side of Corte Madera Creek, it's a fairly popular path. There are a lot of pedestrians and bicycles that use it. In total, based on the volumes that we looked at, there's in the peak hours, there's around 50 pedestrians and bicycles that use that path. By order of comparison, that's per hour. Yes.
What's the date of this?
So these are counts that were taken several years ago. So there have been updated counts that have been taken more recently, and I'll get into those in a second. These were taken at the outset of the project, so about 5 years ago. Things have changed since then, and I'll go through that in a little bit more detail in a bit. But for order of comparison,
Does that say October 2008?
it says 2006. So yeah, so it was when the project got off the ground, so a little more than 5 years ago. Just for comparison purposes, the Cal Park Tunnel has, during peak hours, about 100 bicyclists and pedestrians that go through the tunnel. So this is about 50 at Cordondera Creek. And some of the other crossings of the corridor, the pedestrian overcrossing, has about 30 to 40 pedestrians and bicyclists in peak hours. I'll cover that in a little bit more detail in a second. Warnham Drive, about 30 people in peak hours use that trail. And then at Tamalpais Drive, that's also around 30 people per hour during peak hours. So just order of comparison between the different locations. There are also a number of bus routes, bus stops within the corridor. Some of the main ones are shown in the map on the left. There are a number that go up and down 101, use some of the freeway stops. And there are also a number of local routes. Over on the right, we have some of the key stops in the corridor. These are the ones that have generally higher levels of activity, higher numbers of people who get on and off the bus on a daily basis. And so these numbers are daily numbers. You'll note that ferry ridership, around 5,300, this was several years ago, though ferry ridership has fluctuated a little bit. The most recent numbers that we've seen also are 53 to 5,800 ferry passengers. There is a bus stop that serves the ferry terminal. About 100 people a day use it. There are no bus stops right in the immediate vicinity of the Sir Francis Drake interchange, either going east-west or north-south. There are bus stops near the pedestrian overcrossing at Pfeiffer Industrial. About 170 to 190 people a day ride the bus from those stops. And similarly, there are some stops around the Tamalpais interchange. That ridership is a little bit higher, closer to 300 people a day who use the bus stops in that location. Now, focusing in a little bit on the pedestrian overcrossing that David was describing, some of the key aspects of those bus stops are that they are right next to the freeway. The distance, if you walk between one and another, is about 1,400 feet. So for example, there are a number of people who use this as a parking ride. They park, say on Mellon, and take the bus in the morning, either northbound or southbound. But say they're going southbound, you park here, you would walk across an uncontrolled crossing here, cross another one to get to your bus stop. And then if you're coming home in the afternoon, you would get off on the opposite side of the freeway, come here, you would cross signalized crossing here, go up the pedestrian overcrossing, which has ramps at a 7.5% grade, so that's slightly higher than ADA standards. Go over and loop down, cross at another uncontrolled crossing, and get back to your car. So that's just an example of a typical trip, park and ride trip that's using the pedestrian overcrossing today. So how many people are actually using the pedestrian overcrossing? We've done counts. We did some counts last year, which showed that it varied from day to day, and weekends are a little bit different than weekdays. Overall, there are about 280 or so people who use the pedestrian overcrossing on a daily basis during the weekday, and weekend numbers are a little bit lower. Weekend numbers are a little bit lower, so that's a little over 200. We have just been doing some updated counts earlier this month, and had some very preliminary numbers for that. Based on those counts, the weekend volumes that we've counted are a little bit higher, about 20 to 30% higher based on very preliminary information. We'd be happy to come back and provide final numbers as soon as they are ready. That in part, we suspect is due to seasonal fluctuations. Weather temperatures are warmer So people do tend to walk and ride their bike a little bit more in the springtime than they do in when the air temperature is colder, even if weather conditions are still sunny, which they were when we conducted the previous counts as well as the new counts earlier this month. This image here also shows the pedestrian overcrossing and the bus stops. So we have just an aerial image of the bus stops, northbound and southbound. So, who uses the pedestrian overcrossing? In addition to counting the numbers of people, we also conducted surveys. I'll go through each of these since the text is a little bit dark, but we asked people where they were coming from, where they were going to, and we conducted a number of surveys. These are based on results that we've compiled from surveys done last year, but we've updated that information and confirmed the results are very similar in terms of the makeup of people who are using the pedestrian overcrossing. About 75% of people are adults, just under 25% are children or teenagers, and then about 4 to 5% are seniors. It's about 2/3 male, about 1/3 female in terms of overall users. Pedestrians make up most of the users of the pedestrian overcrossing, about 83%. Bicyclists at 17%. And there's slightly more people going westbound than eastbound. Now you might think it would be 50-50. But because of the park and ride pattern that I was mentioning earlier, you do have people who get on the stops going southbound. If they park over on the west side of the pedestrian overcrossing, they don't use it in the morning. But then if they're coming home, say from San Francisco, they get off the bus over on the east side of the freeway and they go one direction over the pedestrian overcrossing to get back to their car. So you do have a little bit more westbound traffic as a result than eastbound activity. Based on the surveys that we did, which included about 80 surveys of pedestrians and a few more of bicyclists, we also asked what type of trip they were taking. Is it a work trip? Is it school related? How long is it? Where did they start their trip and where did they end their trip? So these are the results. The biggest category is walking trips to bus stops. Now these are people who are walking directly to the bus stop. They aren't park and ride users. They live nearby or have some reason for taking the bus, and so they're walking to and from the bus stops. And that's about 45% of the overall group that's using the pedestrian overcrossing. The second largest group is school trips, about 30%. Third largest group would be medium to long distance trips. So these are trips that are well over a mile in length in general, but some kind of in the half mile to mile range. People who are commuting or have a recreational trip, maybe they're jogging across the pedestrian overcrossing or running an errand. They're going shopping at Trader Joe's or some other location. There are people who use the pedestrian overcrossing for pure park and ride purposes that are unrelated to transit. So say you're meeting your carpool in the area and you cross over to get to your car or to get to your carpool ride. So there is some park and ride activity unrelated to the bus stops themselves. And finally, there's about 6% of people who are taking shorter trips. Now these shorter trips are generally a half mile or less. So they would typically be on one side or another of the pedestrian overcrossing. So say going from Trader Joe's over to the gym or vice versa. The large circle here shows the people who are related to park and ride and bus stops. That includes many of the students as well as the primary bus users and park and ride users. That's about 3/4 of the overall count going that we counted out there, which means that if the bus stops moved or the park and ride location moved, then those people would generally move with it since they're focused more on the bus stops themselves and the connection between them. We also surveyed bicyclists. Since there's a fewer number of bicyclists, there's a fewer number of surveys that we conducted, but the largest group for cycling would be those medium to long distance trips. Many of those are recreational trips, though there were also some shopping trips and some commute trips in there as well. Similar proportion of school trips for bicyclists as there were for pedestrians, about 35%. And then finally, for shorter distance trips, there's also some shorter distance bicycle trips as there were pedestrian trips using the POC. That's just under 10%. So to summarize, the pedestrian overcrossing as it is today, the structure is not ADA compliant. The grades are very steep. But there's many of the users are related to the bus stops and park and ride activity. And under the project alternatives that have been discussed, generally the transit stops would be ADA compliant, and they would generally be closer together. So I will briefly get into that and then hand it back over to David to cover some of the other ideas that have come up. But for the project alternative as was in the environmental document, this is an example of the bus stops being closer together by a little bit. So this distance would be about 1,200 feet between the stop in the southbound direction over here, and then the stop in the northbound direction over here at that Warman Drive. Connecting those two stops, there would be 1 and 2 controlled signalized crossings, but no uncontrolled crossings for pedestrians. And that route would be an ADA route. So I'll hand it back over to David to go over some of the other conditions in the area.
Okay, so real quick, I'm going to review some of the opportunities, and there's a lot of opportunities to improve bicycle pedestrian circulation as well as transit access within the corridor. What I'm going to do here, though, is zoom in on this slide so it's easy to read. This is looking, again, north is to the top, and here's 101. We found lots of opportunities to improve multi-use pathways, including the pathways across Cordillera Creek. Again, they're both at the minimal widths for about 4 and 5 feet. Those could be improved under the project that was in the environmental document, about 12 feet wide each. Staying on the west side, a multi-use pathway was proposed to continue from that Cordillera Creek overcrossing southerly along the west side of the freeway, crossing mid-block at Pfeiffer with special traffic controls, and then continuing southerly all the way to the bus stop that Matt was showing earlier, plus Warren Drive. And then a multi-use pathway on the north side of Warnham, which will provide a second pathway on Warnham that can connect with the Sandra Marker Trail. So complete multi-use pathway along the west side of the highway. Also staying on the west side of the highway, there is a possibility of restriping and then some minor improvements along Camel Vista to include class 2 or marked bicycle lanes on Camel Vista. On Warnham, besides the retention of the north pathway and the extension of the pathway west of the freeway to Camel Vista, there was a proposal to take the existing multi-use pathway, which is somewhat narrow and right next to the curb. So actually a bicyclist could fall down into the street, but move it to the other side of those piers that I was showing you. So it'd actually be completely separated from traffic. So this could be a 12-foot wide multi-use pathway, completely separated from traffic from Camel Vista all the way to Redwood Highway with 2 crossings of the street. One crossing would be at the signalized northbound off-ramp, which was proposed, and the other crossing would be at Redwood Highway, where there's already crossing on the other side of the street today. Following on the east side of Redwood Highway, then there's a multi-use pathway that ends in this vicinity right here. So the proposal was to provide a very wide sidewalk along all of Redwood Highway, along the east side of Redwood Highway, all the way up to the pedestrian overcrossing according to Bear Creek on the other side here. and provide southbound Class 2 bike lanes. The right-of-way in that area is very constrained, so it's hard to fit everything in. It's either southbound narrow bike lane and it's northbound narrow bike lane, and then a very narrow sidewalk. Although what was decided at the time, what was proposed, was a southbound bike lane and a wide sidewalk in the northbound direction. Understanding that with the ramp improvements, traffic volumes would decrease substantially on Redwood Highway throughout this whole area. This map, I will go back to the bigger map because it shows some things outside of the zones I was just talking about. It does show Class 2 bike, potential for Class 2 bike lanes on Camel Vista south of Warnham, as well as improvements on the north side of Port of Mirror Creek, including sidewalk connections east and west along Sir Francis Drake, as well as north and south in this area. The last slide I want to show you is this one. This is slightly reoriented, 90 degrees. So northbound is to the right. And all the orange lines show you the proposed facilities that I was just discussing for pedestrians and bicycles. The blue dots, though, show the proposed transit facilities. As we mentioned before, the existing bus stops are located right here and right in this vicinity, right next to the highway. The proposal for these 101 bus stops is to relocate them southerly, off the freeway, near the ramps instead. So these two bus stops will be relocated, and then introduce 4 brand new bus stops that don't exist at all today. 2 of them would serve 101, including this bus stop, which would be next to the northbound 101 on-ramp, and then this bus stop, which would be next to the widened southbound 101 off-ramp. So that would serve regional trips, north and south, as well as people that want to transfer to the ferry and other places. And then 2 additional bus stops that would be used for local or regional trips along Sir Francis Drake would be provided as well. This would serve westbound traffic, and this would be an eastbound bus stop at this point. This is the last slide. All along, we've been working with advocacy groups and interest groups, whatnot, about how can we make the facilities as safe as possible. And you'll see some features on this diagram, this montage. It shows some treatments that have been considered, including bicycle traffic signals used for bikes. Either they get the advanced signal or they get their own signal. Green bikeways through intersections. San Anselmo, if you didn't notice, at the hub in the last week, has installed some of these. Wide sidewalks, which was the proposal for the east side of Redwood Highway. Advanced yield lines and other treatments, including pedestrian signals that have early release, early activation for pedestrians. These are some of the tools that can be considered. There are many more, and practice continues to evolve. So with that, if you have any questions, Matt and I are here to answer any questions you have.
So we have time allocated for just working group discussion and questions. Yes, Fran.
I have a question. That's the perfect slide to ask you. So, in my head, I can see how this bus stop right here might make sense, right? For northbound traffic. Because there are people that live over here, and it's located near an area. I live over here, like right up here. And I guess I'm wondering what kind of studies we think would put people in these kind of bus stops here. Because they're hard to walk to, from what I can tell. I'm certainly not an expert.
Well, I think some of the bus stops could be used. Not all buses will stop at the ferry. Some will be regional trips that users could get off at this bus stop and walk to the ferry, for instance, for SMART. Same with this bus stop. But also bus stops can be used for transfers. So there may be some folks that are coming from the Ross Valley, get off at this stop and want to transfer to the northbound 101 stop at this location. So it's not, all the bus stops aren't just from walking from the home or from parking ride. It can be used for transfers as well. Plus, you can imagine that a lot of employees in the area probably could benefit by having, another, travel mode. And buses may be very advantageous for some of those folks.
Can I do a follow-up to that question?
Yeah.
Dave, did Marin Transit and Golden Gate provide some input into the relocating of the new stops?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm assuming.
Months, if not years.
Those are the stops they want.
Yeah,
Okay,
those are
that's
the
good.
stops they wanted, absolutely. I mean, they want to have very little delay getting off highway, off system, but as much safety as possible, and a safe route to transit. For safe route to school, it's also safe route to transit, making sure that the pathways are clear and safe, and it's easy to get there.
And then when you're talking about the transfers between, say, the local route and the regional route, so they're also aiming for better connectivity between routes and between different modes of transit.
Absolutely. Yeah, right now it doesn't exist.
Okay.
So this has been a need that's been identified for decades, especially in this area. And of course, the current bus stops are not a very comfortable position whatsoever.
I would like to ask a question, and this is outside of the area of the project, but would people from Brad's neighborhood have an opportunity to catch a bus that would bring them to this transfer point? Do you have any idea where the other bus stops are down St. Francis Way?
I know where they're actually, and he probably does too.
Here?
Yeah.
To any of these bus stops? Absolutely. I mean, Brad's neighborhood, very steep. There are some sidewalks and there are some not sidewalks. But you know, yes, absolutely. You can cross at Alicio and Berry. There'll be it's a signalized intersection with a crosswalk. There are no plans at this point to put a crosswalk on the north side of Drake because any pedestrians on this side of Drake would have to cross that high-speed, free-flowing off-ramp. So all of these would be accessed along the south side of Drake with the sidewalks and pathways that be constructed underneath this area. However, you know, as you can see these orange lines here, a new sidewalk would be provided on the north side of Drake starting at this point and then going back to the east, matching with that gap I showed you in the photograph on the north side of St. Francis Drake.
Thank you, David. Are there any other questions?
I just have one more. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask it. If it's going to be covered later, that's fine. But, you know, I keep hearing people tell me about the old railroad right away and about how that so easily connects. And even looking at the map, you can see that it does connect and that these other bike paths are kind of, you know, on and off, and there's cool roads and things there. I'm wondering, you know, what is the reason why that is not, or has not continued to be explored? Because I know that there probably is a reason, but I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I need to turn that back. Diane, do you mind?
Yeah, sure. We've actually done quite a bit of analysis of that because the Central Ridge Ferry Connector project coming out of Talbot Hill will provide a bridge over Drake. Can we continue that path and put a bridge over the creek and continue it on the levee? At the time we were developing the Central Ridge Ferry Connector, we didn't have the financial capacity, the approval from the right-of-way owner, SMART, and a number of other issues associated with crossing the creek to really look at that time. Now, as part of this project, we've chosen for both cost reasons as well as, again, the difficulty of providing a new bridge over the creek. We've chosen to put our facilities along Redwood Highway. So I think that if this comes up as one of the recommended options, which we understand is likely to be, from the public coming up at our next meeting, that we're going to want to bring out some of the information we have on this and be glad to revisit it with the working group.
I think it's important to note it was, under this plan, it was never precluded from occurring. As a matter of fact, you know, this, what's shown here shows a widened sidewalk along the east side. It's a very cruddy sidewalk right now, but there's very tight right of way through this whole area. Able to squeeze the southbound bike lane, but not northbound. But by no means was this ever precluded. It just has some environmental effects and cost implications. As Diane mentioned.
I was just going to say, there's also a sort of a hybrid proposal that didn't include the creek over crossing, but got connected up to the north south or to the railroad grade at some point. But as you said, Dave, nothing like what you've got.
Yes, there's been some discussion of obtaining an easement from a favorable landowner of actually, sneaking it back through this area. So you can regain, just reconnect with that 12-foot wide Class 1 facility that's proposed right there. So there's some discussion about that.
Yeah, and then I think that, but the creek crossing is an enormous undertaking, fiscally, environmentally, tearing down what's there. But I don't think it was taken off the table, but for reasons, it's a pretty big hump to get over.
The informal discussion was several times that if they ever cross the creek, they would include bike ped facilities. They do not want to allow their right of way to be used at that time. This was back in 2008-9 for a bike pedestrian facility until they had more understanding of their future plans. Now, could that be revisited? Maybe. I'm just giving you a brief history of why that was, that phase 2 of the creek was dropped as a facility within the railroad.
I just wanted to comment about what you're seeing is the little segments interrupted by driveways or intersections. There is a real concern that was voiced earlier this year by members of the public that puts bicyclists as well as pedestrians into conflict points with vehicles, and that it was the very strong preference of the community that as much as is possible, bicycle and for that matter pedestrian routes be safe and separate from where the vehicles are. You had mentioned that would be done under this plan, under the freeway at Warnham. But of course there are the other intersections, they be signalized, but again it puts bikes and pedestrians in conflict potentially with vehicles. So I just think we really need to keep that in mind. In other parts of the country, and certainly in parts of Europe, the standard is safe and separate. We probably all remember the young girl up in Nevada who was bicycling. I think she was bicycling home from school. I think it was in the afternoon. She was struck by a vehicle and killed. And just this morning, a child traveling to high school in San Jose was struck and killed a block or two from the high school. And that was a signalized intersection. I don't have the details of what happened in San Jose. But even at signalized intersections, it can cause a problem. And I have heard from numerous parents who live on the east side of Corte Madera that they will not let their children ride to school because they don't consider those intersections to be a safe way for their kids to travel. And that's just kind of really a shame. I hope that we can come up with a way that will ease everybody's concerns in that way. Thanks.
So I was going to ask Van, with both the new school on the east side and the Windcup properties, were there any bike ped improvements contemplated with those that either overlap with what's here or make improvements?
Well, the sidewalks around Tamil Vista and Warnham would be slated to be looked at as some improvements there, but
No bike.
not any safe separate, pathway.
If you can't do, I understand the bill is wanting safe and separate, but if you can't do completely safe and separate, does that mean we don't seek to do bike?
No, I said as much as possible. I just think that should be our goal.
Can I, I have a couple of questions, Dave. One of the very first slides you gave was the counts, and it was more proportional thing on all the crossings. And I thought it was really interesting that all the crossings actually get used. And what it said to me is that, and I think I completely am empathetic to to wanting to keep the head overcrossing that exists today, and it would be a huge loss to lose that. But at the same time, it looked to me that you've got people using more. And you've got, I mean, what were the proportions in here? To me, it said people are going to use whatever way they can that works best for them to get east-west. And they're all getting used. And to me, it spoke to the need to want to actually improve the Warren bike ped regardless of what happens with the overcrossing to stays or goes. I mean, I don't know if most but they're all getting used.
I agree. Yeah, they are. And some more so by pedestrians than bicyclists, some vice versa. But the pedestrian overcrossing, Warnham and Temple Pius all have roughly proportional and equal numbers of users on a daily basis.
So to me, I said we want to improve, we want to be improving bike ped east-west wherever we can, making it make it as safe as possible. But those improvements, that's what called to me. And then on the Warnham, I remember one of the concerns with the Warnham bike ped and the off-ramp there as a project proposal was what was going to happen in terms, that not either not feeling like or being not as safe as it is now with folks coming off the freeway there. I just wish we could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. This is a 3-lane crossing, which is congested. It does have leading pedestrian interval, light comes up, it has pedestrian countdown signals as well. So those would be the 3. If you're using the southern route, the 3 intersections, if it was that grade, that you would need to cross.
Quick question. At Redmond Highway, aren't there 2 signals because you cross from the sidewalk by Shorebird Marsh to an island, and then a separate crossing to cross the right turn lane from Warren to southbound Redmond Highway?
Yeah, that is how this diagram shows up. It'd be used with the same pedestrian light. And it could, the island, we've looked at taking it out and tightening up the intersection so right turns have to go slower through there. And just to be real clear, this intersection would all operate as one intersection with how the lights work together and how traffic moves and pedestrians move. So that'd be very important. We looked at putting a roundabout there, but it doesn't fit. You could sit in the area and actually provide a lot of that.
Any other questions before we go to the public comment or any comments on the received proposed?
You said that on at the Pfeiffer, at southbound Pfeiffer, the bikes would be coming across sort of, it looked like sort of mid-block there, and you said there'd be a signalized crossing.
Oh, right here, sure.
Yeah, isn't that going to cause problems for backing up onto the freeway?
Well, there's a crosswalk right here now.
But it's a dash.
It's a dash, so you take your life and risk. Don't put me on that. And then there's another crosswalk that brings you back to the bus stop right here. The intent of this was to get rid of those crosswalks because the bus stop would be relocated down here. However, if this is a class 1 or multi-use pathway, we would still need to cross Pfeiffer, and that could be set back. Pfeiffer's 3 lanes in this area, so you can actually create, with the center area, create a refuge area.
It's not signalized.
No, it's not. No, that one, you said that one was going to have something.
Yeah, it wouldn't be signalized, but it'd be using these new rapid flash lights like you see in North San Pedro.
So I just was worried about traffic coming on. Well, and remember, the traffic coming right there is not coming from the highway. It's coming from across Madera Creek.
Traffic levels have really deep, under this scheme that this was associated with.
If you were doing the freeway improvements as well, yes.
And the device we're talking about could be actuated, so the lights flash and you cross one stream of traffic.
And then one last question, I'm sorry to be asking so many questions. With the Larkspur Station area planning, that sort of gets, again, back to the transit and bike ped walking around in that area. I'm just wondering what the impact, that's gonna create more stuff going on there, I would imagine, in terms of people using the crosswalks, going to the bus stops, and a lot more going on to that freeway. And that was not foreseen, I don't think, when we were doing this original design over.
It's evolved. They both evolved together. A lot of the same people have been working together on these projects, so I say yes, they are included. And as a matter of fact, the increased traffic that could be generated by the TOD, the Transit Oriented Development Plan, at Larkspur is included in the projections as well. So the bike transit connections and the traffic is included as part of this, as well as Wing Hub.
Question, you mentioned that in Port Madera, particularly right in the area of the Town Place overcrossing, that it was heavily used for bus stops. And could you go a little more time, what is being considered to improve the pedestrian bike safety, especially where it relates to the access to those bus stops?
Tamalpais Drive?
Mm-hmm.
So that was looked at early on as what could be done at that interchange, including, by the way, that interchange is similar to a lot of interchanges. In Marin, it was once a full cloverleaf for clovers, which was very autocentric and great in the 1950s. But what's left over are these very fast diagonal ramps that are tough for pedestrians and tough for bicyclists to cross. You also have Tamalpais overcrossing, which is a difficult grade, and as you know, there's lots of rear-end accidents that occur there. There's only a sidewalk on one side. There's curly-Q ramps for pedestrians to get to those bus stops and whatnot. We looked at several interchange options, which would not only help facilitate vehicular traffic, but bike, ped, and transit access as well, including tightening up some of the ramps so turns into a little slower, crosswalks are shorter, suppressing or elongating the structure itself so it's not so steep. It's easier for bikes and pedestrians, and better access to the transit stops without having to cross a freeway on-ramp. So there are some schemes and schematics, but historically what happened was once the Madera ramp decision was made to retain the Madera ramps, because of the connection between Madera and Tamalpais, the intent of the Tamalpais improvements was removed from the project.
I'm not talking about removing, I'm not talking about a whole new project.
Okay.
What I'm talking about is that you had mentioned in the presentation that there's a heavy ridership there.
Yeah, about 300 each direction.
And so being that is, one of the most heavily used areas, I'm asking what do you propose to improve to make it safer, being that there is higher ridership there?
Well, it's not part of the project that was proposed in environmental documentation, but there are lots of ideas for improving access to the transit stops, either under existing conditions or under reconfigured interchange concept. So currently, it wasn't proposed as part of the project environmental document.
If we expand the project area to include it again, then we're dealing with the
Right, but in the map, it isn't. The boundary is including that particular area.
I will say what we did find is if the Tamalpais interchange is reconfigured, from the 50 style interchange to tighter ramps and not so free flowing facilities, there are a lot of opportunities to really improve bike and transit benefits, as well as safety if you redo the structure, of course.
Yeah, I don't want to be a broken record, but what I'm saying is that I'm not suggesting a rebuild because I don't want to sacrifice Madera, but what I'm considering or suggesting instead is a remodel where it doesn't have to address the Madera existence or non-existence, but just something, whether it be cantilever out the lanes to widen it or something that might be there. Because
so a light remodel. Yeah.
It is a safety issue, as you pointed out. It is heavily used.
Right. I think that those things could be looked at as well. One thing to keep in mind is under a light remodel or a heavy remodel, you still would have to comply with ADA. So if we're touching an existing structure that is too steep, it may be a go or no go, something like that. In other words, you have to replace the whole thing. But we understand what you're saying.
So I think we need to go to public comment to go on to the northbound options. Should we go to that?
Yes, and before we do, I'd like to welcome Dan Mahoney from Caltrans. Thank you very much for being with us. I would like to open for public comment, and the first hand who up was on my right here.
Sure, thank you. I'm Maria from the San Francisco Bay Trail Project, and certainly what David presented is correct about our existing Bay Trail alignment. We have a lot of these sort of from our original 1989 plan, but we always strive to have, as David also said, a Class 1 multi-use pathway as close to the shoreline as possible, which is the Bay Trail. And so I think most people in this room know that we've been looking at the railroad alignment for about 10 years, since the 2004 study that we helped fund to look at that alignment. So I'm really glad to hear a lot of discussion among the working group members about the railroad corridor alignment. And for example, in Sonoma County, just over the border, the Bay Trail alignment used to be on Highway 37, which is just, everybody knows that. These are some opportunities that come up over the last 10 to 15 years, and the Bay Trail in Sonoma County is now located on levee at Central Baylands. It'll be on the levee at Sears Point, really a much more appropriate place for the Bay Trail. So just to say, yes, this is accurate currently, but we're always striving to move it towards the area where we have the chance.
Yes, sir.
Could you, Dave, could you put up the proposed conditions? Yeah, there we go.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
My name's Eric Miller. I live in Corte Madera, a longtime resident. I'm a member of Corte Madera BPAC, and also a member of Wind Deserves Better. And we've been looking at this and working on this, and just a few misconceptions. Well, first, there's $143 million. We have an opportunity to build the preferred alignment of the north-south Greenbrae. And that's what everybody, this is from here, straight through over here. Safe and separate. And we've actually designed and proposed some undercrossings here and here, so that you have complete safe and separate all the way from, you could go to Corte Madera from Yankee Park and Corte Madera right into San Fel, safe and separate. Misconception that this is a plan of the Bicycle Coalition. The Bicycle Coalition supports it. It's also on the general plan for Corte Madera, for Larkspur, for Marin County, and it's the preferred alternative in the TAM studies. The TAM studies in 2007, TAM did a study and worked out the alignment with SMART, and there is the ability to bring this straight across to continue over. The first part of the Central Marin Ferry connector that you see there in the dotted lines, we have a pointer. So this is what we're in the process of building now, and that can go straight across and right through here to Santa Monica Trail. This is the obvious solution. To talk about going on the bent caps or going, all the different conflict points. I think David had up all these different driveways, and I think Ms. First was commenting on that, all the different conflict points. That's not a good trail. This is going to be completely safe and separate all the way. This is what everybody, BPAC just the other night voted unanimously support this alternative. We have San Rafael High School, the Tamalpais High School boards voted in support of this. Everybody wants this alternative. This is the time to do it. We have $143 million, and this is the time to build this. This is not an overwhelming task. This is all right-of-way land. And let me say the other thing. We have Bikes to School coming in from the Bayside community. This is the extension of the Bay Trail coming down here, straight down here to the Bayside community. Warnham is the linchpin between the Santa Monica Trail, which is the north-south Greenway to the west side, and the old railroad right-of-way trestle there. It's just absolutely critical. We can't have, what David was pointing out was 4 conflict points. That's not state-of-the-art anymore. Nobody's building those. What's state-of-the-art is safe and separate. It has to be grade separated. You can't have cars. We have all our little kids wanting to go between the Bayside community and the Sandy Marker Trail. We can't have them crossing 4 stoplights. It just doesn't. And so I would urge this board, we have this, just one more point here. The whole presentation was, one, how poor our infrastructure is, and two, how not that many people are using it. Well, yeah, they're not using it because it's really poor. This is an incredible opportunity that we've got, and we've got to go with this. And we need to start focusing in on this. I'd like to see the planners looking at this. We have some great planners here. Let's look at these great alternatives that we have, something we can all be proud of. This needs to be the focus of this group.
Can you wrap up, please? Thank you very much. We'd like to keep it to a 2-hour meeting today, so if you could hold your comments to 3 minutes, because there'll be an opportunity to present options like this in the next meeting. Yes, Scott?
Thank you. I'm going to be very brief. Yes, the North-South Greenway is extremely important. And in part of the plan simple is that it recommends that you consider an international design competition. No trying to pick and choose with one consultant, but to open it up. You can get $500,000 worth of design work and considerations for a fraction of that. It's been done before. You should consider it. It should open up and really make something that Marin could be proud. And the other thing is the bus stop at the on-ramp at Pfeiffer, okay? I would like to know how 70 and 80 buses southbound on 101 get access to that bus stop and pick up people and continue on down. I find it kind of isolated, and I'll speak later at the next item on the agenda where we'll be distributing Plan S to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, way in the back behind Scott. Thank you.
I'm Barbara Salzman. I'm with the Ring Audubon Society, and I have not heard mentioned one of the main reasons why perhaps this has not been considered. And hasn't been considered now because nobody's talked to us. Certainly TAM knows that Ring Audubon Society has opposed this for a long time because that marsh is an extremely sensitive marsh. It has the highest population of clapper rails in the Central Bay. It's a core population according to the Fish and Wildlife Service. It's a completely different situation than the trail along Highway 37, which will have endangered species. And so that we've opposed having a trail there for many years, and that has never been evaluated with environmental review. It is questionable whether it would fit in, whether you have to fill marsh, regardless of the right-of-way. The right-of-way includes tidal marsh, so that doesn't give SMART or anybody else the right to go and get permits. And it's highly questionable that you would get permits to fill that marsh. Whether there's enough space if you don't fill the marsh, I don't know. It would require an entire rebuilding of the levee. You have to consider it for a sea level rise, so it would have to be a lot higher than it is now. And it would set the stage for continuing that path further south, which I personally worked very hard to get that Bay Trail off of the levee when they first established the Bay Trail. I was in the original committee. So that's a major issue that has not been addressed, but if nobody knows about us, I am letting you all know now that we do not support that. We'll do our darndest to make sure that that marsh gets protected.
Thank you, Barbara. Yes, to the left in the back of Barbara.
I'm Peter Chase from Corte Madera. One of the factors, if you haven't experienced the Bellum Avenue crossing in San Rafael, this is what's been recreated at Warren. You know, a lot of freeway exit line lanes to cross, and if you drive to the post office and try and circumnavigate that intersection, you'll experience for yourself exactly what's going to happen with the plan that's on the way. A lot of freeway lanes to cross, it's the wrong plan. You need to incorporate what's coming up in future proposals for this area. It's too dangerous. It's that simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering if we should have the next presenter get started while we hear the next few comments, because I'm a little sensitive. It's almost like
You mean, we'd like you to set up?
Yeah.
That's fine. Are there any further public? Yes,
Two
Amy.
more comment, please.
2 more?
Two more after this. Two more comments.
One of the things that concerns me when I listen to the data on the overcrossing in the area is it's looking at current numbers. And since 1999, bike ped numbers have gone up about 170% here in Marin overall, in some communities far more than that. One of the things that is not being looked at, as far as I know, up to this point, needs to be looked at, is what are the future projections. At the Golden Gate Bridge meeting that both Alice and I were at a week or so ago, they were looking at charging for parking there, which is going to create incentives for people to find other methods to get to the Larkspur Ferry Terminal. And so when we talk about having to cross roadways, in addition to the kids and parents not wanting to allow their kids to cross, if we want to create an incentive, a magnet for people to get to the ferry, we want to be able to allow them to get from Old Town Corte Madera all the way through Larkspur and get under this portion of the freeway. Freeways are danger zones, and any of you that have tried to cross any freeway on-ramp and off-ramp throughout Marin know that they're the most inhospitable places to cross. So that was one point that I wanted to make. I think we need to take a really close look at future growth in the area. I also wanted to point out that the pedestrian overcrossing, as with all of its shortcomings, serves local trips, and I think that we need to continue to consider local trips. We don't get rid of 5th Street because we have 4th Street and 3rd Street, and we don't get rid of 1st Street because we have 2nd, 3rd, and Santa Fe, for example. The other thing that's really important to consider is what you look at today is not an indication of what you will get in the future. A good example is in Frente Pathway in Novato, where cyclists used to have to ride on the freeway. If someone went out there and counted, oh, there's not many people using it, it doesn't justify building it, that's the wrong logic. The reason people aren't building it is because it is dangerous. And then finally, regarding the bridge, the 2007 report, the bridge over Corte Madera Creek, amazingly shows the price using the bent caps, which were existing in that report, and using a separated bridge in the same order of magnitude of cost. It would seem that one would be more expensive than the other, but until we have future cost numbers, I don't think we should draw any conclusions about the cost of getting over Corte Madera Creek, and it has not been dropped. That project was tabled so that we could move forward, so that TAM could move forward with the project that was being proposed a while back. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to add a comment here with respect to the Golden Gate Bridge District. Is that they are considering pilot shuttle program, so it's not completely dependent on increase in head or bike usage.
I'm saying they could push that, and they also said the lion's share of their customers live in Corte Madera and Larkspur.
Yes, David.
I had a question for David, and that is, I saw the proposed, what I would call low-budget bus stops at Sir Francis Drake and 101. And what I wanted to ask is, if you had a significant budget, what would you do to create a great connection between Sir Francis Drake and 101 buses?
All right, this is not a good time to answer it, so we'll hold that in
But
your
I wanted
comment.
to get it out there.
There'll be another opportunity.
So that he could bring back,
Okay.
so that we understand what are we trading off in going ahead with these bus stops. What are we giving up in terms of future potential? That's a question I think this committee should ask.
All right, we have time for one more.
My question is very basic. It looked to me as though we were using the old freeway map from when we had the flyovers, and we're not doing that anymore, I don't think. And I would suggest that TAM go back to the as-built plans as the freeway is now and start designing from there, because we need to have some very new ideas brought forward, and they don't always exist with the public. They can come from TAM as well.
Well, that is an idea, but no decisions have been made yet. And I think I'm going to close the public hearing. Yes, please.
So, I just have a minute,
Pardon? Yes, Gina.
I think that's a really good point that Cindy brought up. You know, why are we looking at that as, you know, the things that were in the build project when really this committee was supposed to be looking at concepts that were thrown out there, and there weren't any other concepts that were really covered with it. I don't know, I just find that a little confusing.
That's That's because part of the agenda was to look at historic design options. It's
Right, was that the
non-friendly.
only design, that's my point, was that the only kind of design that is considered, or
No,
were
if
there
you
other
look,
things?
if you look at the packets we've been given, there were many.
Right, but not in the presentation, for the government.
We also have a second section next time, depending on how many options are presented, that we can look at others, if there's other things that need to be discussed. So it sounds like in some that the overcrossings tied to are often, the majority of the overcrossings are tied to the parking rides and the bus stops. There's an interest in maximizing safe and separate wherever possible, but still looking at improvements. And the railway is exciting, but it has significant considerations tied to the crossing of the marsh and the significance of that. So we will continue talking about the bike and pedestrians next time, contingent on how it works with all the other options, and can explore other pieces for you all to look at. And now what we want to do is go to agenda item 4, which is continuing to review the design options. And we're going to look at northbound tonight. And I think we have information in the packet, or do we have separate handouts? It's in our packet.
All right, so we're going back to item 4, and Diana will present.
Yes, thank you. Much as we reviewed southbound project evolution and options, we would like to take this opportunity to quickly review the northbound project evolution and options that were considered in the corridor. I would ask the team to try not to repeat what we did last time in terms of basic information about the project. And we are a little short on time. Try and move, however we can, move into the options that we're considering. So I'll introduce Dina Potter, Kai Chan, who are here to lead the discussion.
So, thank you again for letting us be here. The last meeting we went over southbound alternatives, and this time we'll go over northbound alternatives that are a little simpler, so it should go a little faster. So I wanted to just remind, as you look at the afternoon congestion on 101-580, one of the significant bottlenecks is that northbound section between where Tamalpais on-ramp comes on, and then you have the industrial on and off ramps, and then you have the off ramps to Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Last time we talked a little bit about the types of traffic conflicts and how you deal with those. You can remove one of the movements, relocate a movement, separate them, or increase the weaving distance between them. In the northbound section, we have some additional constraints. One is very, well, you can see the green here. That is the ecological reserve. How do you do this? Oh, he's always got a thing. Yeah, so this was one of the constraints, as well as you've got some these yellow areas are residential, the mobile home parks on the east side of 101, and then the orange are business and industrial uses. Commercial. The existing condition, and this is just to go into a little more detail, as you're going north, you have a weaving section as the Tamalpais on-ramp comes on. Then you have northbound 101 traffic that wants to get off to go to either Sir Francis Drake Boulevard or to Industrial. Then you have traffic coming on at Industrial that wants to go to Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. And then you have those illegal guys that get on at Industrial and cross all the way over and want to go on northbound 101 so that they don't have to go through the intersection down on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. We did our initial brainstorming with Caltrans, with all the stakeholders, and we came up with 13 concepts. I've grouped them together again so that they're kind of like improvements. If you have questions, we can go over them at the end of that little section. So we can either close the ramp, and that'll remove the weaving sections. We can develop more of an interchange at Warnham so that we increase the weaving distance between the Sir Francis Drake off-ramps.
and there's different varieties in there, but it's basically the same idea. We can build new bridges. We looked at doing a separate bridge east of the Tamalpais ramp structure that crosses Sir Francis Drake, thinking that we could get the local traffic over there. It really didn't help our numbers much, but that was one of the options. And then again, we went back to braided ramps. Let's try separating the movements. We looked at trying to have them up towards the creek. It did not help with our weaving distance between industrial and the off-ramp. And then we looked at trying to do braided ramps back towards Warnham so that we could increase the increase any weaving distances, either coming from Tamalpais or to the north. And so none of them were perfect, but we did a qualitative assessment of the traffic improvements versus the environmental impacts, and we took the best attributes of several of them. It tended to be the braided ramp at Warnham and the some kind of improved crossing at Port Madera Creek. The four actual options that came out of this are this A, B, C, and D, and you'll see that things are geared towards Warnham and or the new Sir Francis Drake reconstruction. So you just tell me when to.
Go ahead. Oh, any questions first?
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to keep moving? Okay. Well, just before you get started, I want to make sure that you're oriented again with Tamalpais here on the left. Then you have Warnham where you have that new bridge structure. And then you have Sir Francis Drake with the water to the right. Is that clear for everybody? I know you've been looking at these in housing for how long? You know where they are, right? Okay.
Okay, let me talk about the options, the northbound options A, B, and C. I want to touch on the profile of the freeway. A lot of times we look at horizontal and we don't think about the vertical piece of it. Currently, what's happening is that the freeway goes underneath Tamalpais. It's somewhat flat here. It starts to climb and goes over Warnham at this point. So the freeway is going over Warnham. Then it comes back down and flattens and then climbs back up to go over the creek and over Sir Francis Drake to the north. Northbound A, the design here was to try to increase the weaving distance between Warnham and off-ramp to Drake. Dina touched on that. The benefit of trying increasing that weaving distance. To do this, we do need to remove the industrial ramps, which was shown here. And this concept looks at a basic diamond imaging of Warnham. One thing we found when we started looking at this is that the distance from the end of structure to Redwood, there's not a lot of distance, it's only about 300 feet or so. And typically, we want to have more distance between the intersection and the ramp intersection. So we looked at a concept where we pretty much did the interconnect intersection, what David was talking about, in terms of making the Redwood Highway intersection and the ramp intersection work as one intersection. So that timing, the phasing, so that promotes a safer crossing of pedestrians and also safer movements of cars. What's the next one?
I got it.
Okay. The next one is again looking at the Warnham interchange concept. Someone mentioned a roundabout. We did look at a roundabout. We found that from a traffic standpoint, the roundabout, you need 2 lanes. And once you get to 2 lanes, your circle gets pretty big. And to integrate the ramps and the intersection at Old Redwood Highway, we found that we need more right-of-way, and which means that you have to realign Redwood Highway. And that means we're getting into the sensitive area back to the Marks and Ave here, and also there's the trailer park that would be impacted with this concept. So we start looking at the next option, option C. Option C was trying to get away from the intersection here and create sort of a graded concept. Here's when we started looking at grading the ramps. Grading the ramp, the on-ramp could go over one and connect to the freeway, and the off-ramp and get off from 101 and connect to 1. However, once we started doing this, we find that it's very difficult to design this ramp to go over Woodland and come back down to meet the freeway. The distance is very short. We looked at raising the street, actually increasing, filling it, making the height of Redwood Highway higher so that you could make this ramp work. What this meant was a retaining wall and also impact into that sensitive area. We looked at moving this ramp further south, but the further you go south, you have less right away. You basically have to rebuild Redwood Highway in front of the North Shore, the shopping mall here. So we continue looking at the design to see what else we could do to address the issue of the weaving problem here. This also doesn't address the weaving distance. You increase the weaving distance a bit from the existing, but you haven't increased it that much where you're really making a difference. So northbound D was to try to look at how can we eliminate this weaving problem on the freeway. And that's where this concept came about. And let's separate it. The right-of-way is very tight in here, so we found a design where we could actually separate the traffic so local traffic could get off and connect to the existing ramps. Whereas freeway traffic stays on freeway, it's separated by a barrier. What that did is that you eliminate the freeway issue. You basically put the issue down on what we call connector road or the street. There's actually 3 lanes that we need to make this all work. Now, again, these little dash line represent retaining walls. This is so tight in here. And so from there, we also looked at, once we make that connection, how to get traffic that wants to get to 101 northbound. We would have to rebuild the ramps at the interchange and build a new structure crossing over the creek, crossing Sir Francis Drake and connecting to 101 to the north before you can make that connection. In other words, if you want to get onto the freeway from Greenbrae Highway, you have to go to the south, or you get on here, you continue north, take that structure, go over the creek, go over Drake, and make a connection to 101. This also means that you have to redo the ramps at Sir Francis Drake. But what this does is avoids having traffic going through the intersection of Drake, which is one of the issues that we have looking at the existing condition. Currently, traffic has to get on industrial, they get on, they have to stay to the right, they have to connect to the ramps, they have to stop at the intersection, cross the intersection, and then get up onto our ramp to northbound 101. This impacts operations for Francis Drake.
It allows us to get more green time to traffic on Sir Francis Street. We don't have to pull any time off to let those guys cross.
So from those
Because it's only
basic,
guys crossing.
from those basic 4 concepts, we continue to develop that. What's in this slide? Let me summarize before I do that. Again, all the concepts we're trying to address this weaving situation, this congestion point on northbound 101. Lena talked about traffic getting out from industrial, cutting across lanes into 101. Caltrans also did some intermediate work in terms of putting delineators right now to try to prevent that. However, you still have people that they see opportunity, they make that move, and it's a dangerous move. That traffic is crossing, and you have off-ramp traffic to Drake that's getting off. And so creating a dangerous conflict point there. Northbound D provides some relief in terms of separating the movement, taking that conflict off of the freeway onto the city street or the frontage road and making that connection. However, it has some advantages and disadvantages. I'm going to get into the next talk, so I'll talk a little bit about that. So what we did is that, we said A, B, C, D, there's some good points and some not very good points, and so we needed to find a better solution. We came on northbound E, and that's the next slide. Before I do that, any questions about A, B, and C, D at the front?
I have a question. Can you just briefly address with the closing of industrial, the impact that it's going to have on freeway entrances at Tamalpais and Warnham? And secondly, if you could address what it's going to do to the Redwood Highway traffic with respect to the gas station there, Trader Joe's, Cost Plus.
Sure. You go back a little bit.
Which one are we going to?
This is fine. Either one's fine. It's the same situation. With the closure of the ramps here, traffic that currently get on to the freeway that use this ramp going to the north, they would have to come down to San Pius, because this is not there now. These ramps are not there now.
Can I just make a suggestion? Since the final option doesn't close the industrial ramp, maybe we can come back to Carla's question after you go through the final. Is that all right with you? Sure. And then we can come back to it once people understand why it was
And
left
I'll
open.
come back and ask you a question when we look at that one.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Did you have a question, Diane?
Yes, regarding option D, and well, you took the best features of C and D to create option E. My understanding is that they were all A, B, C, D, I'm sorry, A, C, D, E, and I don't know, were all, I know D and E were the final two that were considered. So it wasn't that D was rejected necessarily, it's just that E was an additional option. But I've never, and maybe this is another question we need to save till after we get to E. I've never gotten a clear understanding as to why E was chosen instead of D. I heard there's a reference in some minutes from a council meeting when Tam, Whitney came to our council meeting and said that E seemed to fit better with southbound C, but there was no explanation for why D was rejected. Unless
those are excellent questions. I'll make sure, if I don't cover it, make sure you ask me again.
Thank you.
Then let's go.
And to be clear, D did not go away, but we took a couple of pieces of D, combined with a couple of pieces of C, and we created D.
Yeah, maybe I should touch on that a little more because Alice made a good point. With D, we actually kept this intersection open. So we made some refinements to make it work as well as it could. It hasn't really changed too much from the current D, but I'll touch on that as we get into the next two slides. One more thing. So we're going to talk about northbound D here. It looks very similar, doesn't it? Again, the question was asked, what happens to traffic that use the industrial on and off ramp? So we kept it open. So basically we connected the two intersections so that we can make that movement. You want to go north on Redwood Highway, you can still make a left turn and then make a right turn into this to there. And you want to go south, you would come down and use San Pius to get to the interchange there. You want to go south. Or you could go to Warren and come down to Warren and go south from that direction.
That was my question. My question was, as far as the impact that it has, I understand about the access and egress, but my question is the change in impact, and all of a sudden we're going to have traffic tie-ups on Redwood Highway and on those freeway ramps because of that change.
Yes, and that's a good question because what's happening here in Redwood, this section between Warren, industrial is pretty busy in terms of becomes long. This section between Warren and industrial is very busy here because of the Trader Joe and some commercial and businesses over here. This traffic here needs to be addressed in terms of, if we go this option, we need to add more lanes in here on Redwood Highway. That's what we would do to mitigate that situation, so that this can handle more of that traffic. What you do not see is how we handle the number of lanes and the left turns within this section in here. So that's how we would mitigate some of those issues. But again, you do have a lot of traffic here. This is one of the negatives with this options, that traffic in here is a concern. Another concern, Diane was asking D&E, this one requires that you build a new structure over from Bear Creek, which means more footing, columns in the creek, and also there's some wetlands in this area where the columns will land to build this connector across the traffic straight and to connect to northbound 101.
It doesn't look to me like the crossing would have to start over the creek. It really would be over Sir Francis Drake, wouldn't it?
Well, you have to start.
Because of the elevation, you're going to have to go back and reconstruct the bridge over because of the height.
Yeah, this actually goes over. It's a pretty high structure as well. And also this is coming off where there's currently two structures. It's not that simple to squeeze another structure between two structures. You pretty much have to rebuild the structures. So that's one of the major engineering challenges. The next one, northbound E. Northbound E addresses the concern about traffic getting onto the freeway and also the local traffic. So with northbound E, we have the braided system near Warren and provided the ramps at Warren so that you want to get onto the freeway, you have direct access to the freeway. You want to get off the freeway and get into and connect to industrial and get to Railroad Highway for some of the access to the commercial, you can do that as well. So basically, you provide two sorts of access for freeway, for regional traffic, and also local traffic by having the more options. Do you notice the difference? You get off 101 and connect to industrial and enter this area here. Or you can also get off at 1 and enter from here. It makes a big difference by having two options because you're spreading out the amount of traffic. You're not consolidating them into one ramp, you're separating them out. This one does not require a new structure crossing the creek and also Sir Francis Strait. We could tie this to the existing structures that are there currently there.
The idea was to separate regional and local traffic. So if you're going to or from 101, you'd be at 101. If you're going to or from Sir Francis Strait, local traffic, you're going to be at industrial, to try to split out the different areas.
And what do you anticipate the level of service to be on the Redwood Highway? Do you think that it will be reduced in that
Yeah, I would have to ask them that. Do you recall the difference between the two on Redwood Highway in that section there?
Sure. For northbound E, because you have traffic that's getting onto the freeway sooner, it doesn't have to travel north on Redwood Highway to get on industrial as it does today. So it actually reduces the traffic volume on Redwood Highway at quite a bit to make the section. So it improves efficiency.
These have the highest traffic operations improvement.
Okay, and what about when you're coming out, say, Trader Joe's out of that shopping center, and say you want to make it a left?
Where do you want to go to?
Make it left.
It depends on
To go south?
Oh, to stay on the city without going on the freeway. Say you want to go to the Village Shopping Center from Trader Joe's.
You make it left?
You want to make a left?
Yeah, make it left onto Redwood Highway and go continue Redwood Highway to...
You can cross from one or 1005.
And is that going to be then signalized?
Yeah, this is signalized at Warner. Can we signalize at the left turn when we come out of the driveways from the mall?
When we talk to the mall, they really like this because when you make that left turn that you're asking about, there's no traffic coming north on Redwood Highway to get on 101. It gets on Warner. Right. So they're very happy with the access in and out of the shopping center and this stuff.
And if you come out of...
There's plenty of traffic coming that way, that it's coming from the Village coming this way. You want to make a left coming from Cost Plus Shopping Center to make a left there, you take your life in your hands. Well, that's what I'm talking about, so that's what I'm asking.
This reduces traffic.
And also, if you're coming out and then you want to go across the creek to Sir Francis Strait, you get on at the intersection and never touch one.
Okay, then that you responded to my
Yeah,
question.
and that's the major difference is that you do have the access at Warner so that you could get on there. That means less traffic would do this to get on at industrial. You don't have to cross this exit here.
Earlier this year, we heard a lot of concern from the community about that really massive retaining wall. On this diagram, as well as the diagrams that were passed around in 2007 and 2008, it simply talks about constructing a one-way road separated from the freeway. And yet, the retaining wall was something like 400 feet long, 24 feet at its highest. That's a lot of concrete. Is there an option for reducing the need for this massive retaining wall, and what could be done?
Yeah, the option to not have a retaining wall is to rebuild River Highway and push it to the east. The reason for the wall is there's not enough space in there The advantage of this one is that there's only need 2 lanes instead of 3 lanes. So therefore, the wall we have a little more space between Collector Road and Redwood Highway. Is that right?
Well,
let me try that again.
Well, and I think part of it, you're talking about this grade right here. There is a structure going over that. We have shown it as a retaining wall. It doesn't have to be. It can be an open bridge. So that you can, in fact, we left it open, and as our plans moved forward, we left it open quite a bit to get the parking lot under there.
Okay.
So it can go farther. It's just retaining wall. It's not cheaper, but it doesn't matter. The retaining wall and the bridge. So it feels more open.
And we've talked, because of that concern that you or others raised, about leaving that open with possible additional parking lot or a parquet type setting underneath there of some sort, so that those are options that we could bring in. Okay.
And
would there be room along Greenbrae Highway for even 4 feet of planting area or something like that to really soften the work? Between the road and the sidewalk?
Yeah, like I'm thinking across from Cost Plus.
Yeah. We could take a look at cross section.
Yeah.
I know we have a planting area in here somewhere.
There's a little, there's currently some
Not along the
landscaping.
entire line.
There's currently some landscaping on the property of the mall here, the shopping area. But it is very tight in there because David's working on getting a bike facility in there as well. And so, yes, Diane and Dina's correct. As a matter of, you want more structures? This shows the short structure, but that structure could be longer and use them on a retaining wall. But there's a price that you pay for that.
The other thing to note is the height of this braided ramp is about 4 feet higher than the Warnham overcrossing, and it's about 100 or so feet north of there. So since we have to come off of 101 and then cross the other ramp, it has to go about 4 feet.
Give me one more question. Going back to option D for a minute, it would seem to me that having a bridge over Sir Francis Drake would completely eliminate the need for one red light cycle in that intersection, which should, I would guess, improve the operations on Sir Francis Drake. Now, with option E, most of the freeway traffic would probably get on at Orange, but you would still have traffic getting on an industrial that might want to drop down and go through that intersection, Sir Francis Drake, and again, creating a red light. So, would it be safe to say that option D would probably have a more beneficial effect on traffic on Sir Francis Drake?
Not necessarily, because on northbound D, it addresses the intersection here. You're putting all the freeway traffic on this structure so that they go over the Drake and connected freeway. On northbound E, northbound E,
Hang on.
the freeway traffic is getting on here one of them. So the freeway traffic, or traffic that wants to go on the freeway, never cross that intersection. They get on the loop here.
Our
they get
idea
onto
was to
101.
make that a bus on loop, so that Golden Gate Transit could use it, but it would not be full.
Okay, but you're still going to have people coming on an industrial that might...
Yeah, that might want to go on the freeway. And that's no matter how you operate that intersection there.
Jack, did you want to go back to D first?
D? I need control, D.
The other thing to point out here is that you're getting on an industrial with all of the traffic going either east or west on Drake.
Exactly.
So you got some weaving that's going to happen in that area there, similar to what we have now. I mean, you're having traffic getting on industrial, they're going to want to go over to San Anselmo, you're going to have traffic getting off 101. You're taking the weave off the main.
Well, the exact same weave that's happening today happens
on the collector road. That's slower speed. You're not splitting the traffic. E gives you 2 points of access into the system. D gives you 1. And so you're still having to use a lot of traffic on the collector.
But, and the environmental impacts for redoing a new bridge, that entered into it.
But just backing up a little bit, talk about the weave. If you're doing a weave at a slower speed which presumably the off-ramp would be at slightly slower speed than the mainline freeway. Isn't the weave a little bit more efficient, or does it not create as much backup?
Yes, it does improve it. How much, I'm not quite sure. Yes, it does.
So it's 6 o'clock. Are you finished with the presentation?
I think we've got.
There's a couple more slides and we're done.
So these were the summary, go ahead, Kai. You just wanted to summarize these. You've heard some of them.
Yeah, I touched on D and E, and this is a quick summary in terms of what both options provide. Both D and E provides a better balance of local freeway traffic. Also address the intersection issue on Sir Francis Drake. Address northbound 101 congestion in terms of getting rid of the conflict point on the freeway and helping the freeway traffic move better and accommodate more traffic on the freeway. And also, both of them provide improvements to the Old Redwood Highway. D, again, this is Diane's question about D and E. Diane has a new structure over Creek. Diane mentioned that there's a major weaving section in there as well from industrial to the ramps. There's 3 lanes in there. So you have a slow weave that actually impacts your throughput of traffic through that section. So you're not getting as much traffic through that section when you need it. D also requires more right-of-way. D also requires some small right-of-way on the north side of Sir Francis Drake to make that connection to northbound 101. E has a better separation of local and regional traffic with the ramps at Warner. You still have the intersection of industrial, so you provide local access, and you also provide better access for traffic that want to get onto the freeway. You get them on sooner, away from Old Redwood Highway, away from Trader Joe and the mall area, that section that you're concerned about. Northbound E does add more ramps that adds one additional ramp intersection that was a concern in terms of pets and bikes crossing on one of them. E also requires an ox lane from Tampines to Warner, which actually provides an added capacity on the freeway. And last but not least, it does provide...
It's actually 12 feet. I wrote the wrong number.
I was looking at that 10, we were talking about 12 on that structure there, crossing the creek. That's a quick summary there.
And then these are the exact same alternatives, just on an aerial background, so I don't know that you guys care.
And this is what's currently in the environmental document. So again, this is kind of a recap of northbound E in terms of address the weaving situation, separate the local regional traffic. Actually reduces travel time on the freeway. That's been shown on the traffic studies. Improves intersection on Sir Francis Drake by taking that freeway traffic off of the intersection, allowing you to actually optimize your signal on Sir Francis Drake for the east-west movement. It does require pets and bikes to cross that intersection every morning, which is a concern that I keep hearing over and over again. It does provide some multi-use path advantage in terms of widening the current bridge that crosses the creek. That's the ox lane from Tampines to Warner.
All right.
Okay. So we'll do some questions and then have a comment period and wrap up. Is that what you think? Yeah, okay. Katie and then Diane.
Thank you for the presentation. With regards to the bike, the crossing structure, with the northbound, does the northbound, let's say it was a standalone project in northbound, does it require the bike ped over crossing the Greenbrae on either E or D?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
both of them.
Anything that widens it requires it to be removed. And we're widening the highway in some way or another, in all of them.
Diane?
Okay, let's say miraculously we're able to come to a decision here and it gets built and traffic's moving great. Isn't there a backup on Sir Francis Drake, especially east Sir Francis Drake, every evening headed to the bridge? And what will happen here if they're able to get through this area, but it just gets backed up on East Sir Francis Drake?
I think there is a backup today. I think we have to look at what the backup, it looks like it's around the, no, you're talking about going west.
Well,
You're talking about
both
going west.
directions.
West is Alicio. Alicio needs to be addressed. And we have looked at some alternatives for sweeping in additional lane and redoing the signal that should have vast improvement.
On the west release.
On the west release. Going east, we're gonna have to look at the same thing around the terminal. That's what's causing.
Around the terminal. But
No, it's
my understanding-
congested on the bridge itself.
Yeah,
It's
my
not backing up all the way.
It does sometimes, it doesn't, that's not a regular recurring incident. As you go to get off of Sir Francis Drake to get onto the bridge, yes, it starts backing up. But you have some section that's open.
Now, Tim has sent a letter to the MTC asking them to look at some low-cost ways to improve the
That
approach
connection.
to the
Yeah.
bridge, which to be low-cost probably can start being. So I'm just wondering if we're looking at all of these components together, or if we're just kind of sort of piecemealing it at this point. So,
I think I want to
jump in on that.
What you see is the evolution of the ramps getting off and on 101, and with consideration of local streets, including Grey. We do want to come back and talk about what Dina alluded to, which is some of the planned improvements on Grey on the west side of 101, as well as some of the constraints on the east side of 101. The current project does not widen Grey going towards the Richmond Santa Fe Bridge. If the working group decides that that's where we should put all of our emphasis, we'd have to see what MTC would agree to with respect to the time it would take to develop that kind of project. So we want to show you what we know is happening and is some short-term improvements that have recently happened on Drake. I'll leave it up to the working group if we want to pursue an alternate project to widen Drake Rolling Bridge. I think that we would be here in 5 years having the same meeting. It's got a lot of its own issues, but it wasn't part of this project's scope. So
I'm not saying
maybe
it should be
in the future, but it wasn't.
Well, I wasn't alluding to the fact that it should be part of it, just that I hope as we're taking all of it into consideration. That's all I'm trying to say, is let's make sure that if we're going to invest all this money to improve operations here, it's not going to be a complete waste of funds because traffic will just be stopped one block up. It's a cost benefit, equation as well as, just common sense to look at the whole area and make sure that whatever we come up with works.
Back to one of our early meetings, we took the growth in the Larksville Land Circle into consideration in our traffic analysis. We know that these northbound options will improve the operation on 101 and will definitely improve access to Drake going west with respect to travel time savings for Greenbrae and Ross Valley. And that's very clear, assuming the growth that we went over with you all the way that was going to occur along Drake. But I think what's missing is what are the constraints on Drake and what do we have as short-term and long-term options. We want to come back and definitely talk more about that. So we will.
Yeah, I want to touch on that, David. The question was level service.
Are we answering?
Yeah, I'm going to suggest with complicated questions like that we take them and answer them as a wrap-up in the beginning of the next meeting. Can we do that?
Or I'm just wondering if maybe they can, I think that's too complicated to follow up.
I have two more questions.
So these will be for follow-up, is that all right?
Let me just give them to you, since they're incredibly important to my neighborhood.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
The second is how much traffic is drawn to Warnham with the new ramps there from the village? So how much more traffic will be coming to Warnham and providing congestion at Barney Bell and Warnham from the village? And the third is how much parking is left on Redwood Highway North from industrial to basically where the pedestrian bridge leaves. That parking is the only parking there is in the neighborhood for residences and businesses, especially during flooding. It's the only safe parking in the neighborhood. My understanding is it's 100% legally. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Yes, David?
I have a question for follow-up, and that is, alternative 10 looked to me to be the best alternative from a standpoint of cost, simplicity, et cetera. And I'd like to know why, without hearing about it now, why these later complex alternatives were derived and alternative 10 was left behind.
Thank you, David. Yes, Stephanie?
Stephanie Molden Peters, Long Island City Council. One thing I thought I was going to see but didn't would be a connection to 580 that is north of Larkspur, and it's in San Rafael. It may have been the famous Alberto flyover.
We had a meeting.
Did you?
On it. Yes.
Okay. And it was rejected because I don't think it was all
I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Scott?
Hi, Scott Stokes, actually with Scott Stokes. I'm going to take 2 minutes here. For 3 meetings I've had my Plan S on this board. It's existed for over 4 years now. And I've submitted it electronically twice, so Christmas is here. You pass these down. You all get...
Okay, you know this will be considered into the next meeting.
You all get a copy so you can study it before the important work group open house that I've asked for you very nicely given me. Okay? And I hope you get a chance to study these before that, because you can't get a handle on it in a completely different plan unless you have a chance to look at it. And the only way to do that is on a large scale in front of you. You can go ahead and give some other people a chance while I pass this out.
As soon as you're finished talking.
I'm finished talking.
All right, is there someone else who would like to make a comment? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And we will move on now. Gina, would you like to summarize meeting insights, if you had any, and next steps?
I think the next steps is that just a reminder to everyone, if you have options, you can put in May 28th is the deadline and send them to Bill Whitney. And if you could fill out the form, the submittal form, that's just going to be really helpful because we can create a common handout, with a summary of each. And then on June 10th, if you could plan on a 5 to 7 minute presentation to the working group, and then we'll follow up with questions, that would be ideal.
What date is that, the presentation?
June 10th, and we'll start at 5 o'clock. You're welcome to come at 4 to set up and mill about and talk about your things informally. But then we'll have the presentations between 5 and 7.
Okay, one more clarifying question. If there's multiple components of a project, do they all go in a single form, or do you want multiple forms? It's probably a Bill question. I think it's important for people to know.
If you want to consider a package, you need to somehow do an ABCD. If you have completely separate...
No, they're just different. They're not all separate alternatives. They're different pieces on different parts of the corridor. There's a dozen different areas where there's improvements, even in your plan.
I'm sure that we can work it out with the...
Okay.
I think that's it.
There's now a few minutes for public comments on things that are not on the agenda, public open time. Any comments? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.